don't want Bill Burr showing up at Sunday service. You need to find God, Titty!
Let's not give it loud everybody for Anthony Eugenio. We're having next time. Very funny. Wayne Russell, everybody.
Welcome to the Open Mic Pain with Anthony and Wayne podcast.
Why, hello everybody, and welcome to an Open Mic Pain with Anthony and Wayne. We're here again in a special guest edition. This time, we're here with one of our boys at Delusional. So, as you guys probably know by now, Delusional Comedy's been giving us lots of awesome opportunities, and one of their best that they have going that we've seen before live is Andrew Boyle. How you doing, buddy?
Thanks, guys. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for being here. And as also always, I have in the co-pilot seat, Wayne Russell. How you doing, buddy?
Wow, it was mild. I had no insults tonight. I guess it's a good night. I'm doing good.
Yeah, if you do the same magic trick every time people know when it's coming, I'm going to get you. Don't worry, you fucking pig. Sorry, go ahead.
So, Andrew, thank you for taking the time to come out and talk with us.
Wait, can I roast you too? Is that?
Oh, 100%.
Oh, all right. I was going to say.
It would be weird if you didn't. By the middle, you have to. Yeah, because you're just like, I'm compelled. He's going to make me.
We were actually just talking before you hopped on.
Yeah.
When I got to work with you down in Quincy.
Oh, yeah.
And Jeff, I still don't know how to say his last name. Is it Lab?
Labby. Abe Lab, yeah. A-B-B-E.
Yeah, you had one of the best roast for him. He was talking about being blind, and he's very Ozzy Osbourne looking. And you said, does anybody else find it weird that the Prince of Darkness is going blind? And that was the best thing I've ever heard. So it was so perfect.
That's my favorite thing in comedy. People talk about stand-up and do you enjoy it? And I feel like a lot of the writing and a lot of the, you guys call the podcast obviously Open Mic Pain. There is a lot of pain involved in going up and trying to get better and bombing and, putting everything together. But my favorite thing has been in the times where I get to host, which I don't always get to do, but the times I get to host, I love that banter between comics because real comedy, I say anybody who does comedy is a real comic, but the people who I consider to really be down for the cause love being roasted. If you don't know what's funny about yourself, then you're probably in the wrong business trying to tell jokes about other people. Like you really, I probably said something about you too, Wayne, and I don't remember what it was, but I remember Uzair was on that night, and it's so funny how people can take certain things kind of the wrong way. Uzair, brilliant up and coming Indian American comedian, said he did a whole joke about not being able to understand his doctor because like the language. Whatever. So of course I got up there and I was like, "Well, how's it fucking feel?" Like in Quincy, and people are like, "Ooh," and I'm like, "Get out of here, get out of here."
Yeah, that is like the brotherhood part of it. The rubbing elbows and making each other laugh at themselves. I think is one of the most fun
take
parts
it too. He has to, because I'm not going to get off this hill that I'm on that he gives a dead fish handshake that's useless. I will say that until the end of time. That guy's throwing out garbage when it comes to handshakes.
It's like somebody just puts a freshly cut, a slice of ham in your hand. It's like,
it's the worst.
You gotta get a stronger handshake. Some comedians need a weaker handshake. I've definitely been like coming off stage, as I talked about hosting. I've definitely introduced some people, and they almost take my goddamn arm off with them when they come up and do like that in between. Now I just always go for fist bumps. I'm like, I don't want any competition as to who's gonna shake each other down the hardest.
Well, then you start with the bloody knuckles.
Yeah. No, I did. Randy Williams did a Stark's Brewery show actually for Delusional too, and he's the host there, and he's great by the way. But he did a thing where he would yank me on the stage, and I was not ready for that when he went to go shake my hand. So I went to go shake his hand, and he pulled me up on the stage. I was like, God damn!
Yeah, there's definitely some interesting stage transition behavior, and guys, I know it's funny because I work a lot with guys like Brett Davey and Barry Wilson and Greg Thomas, and we all know each other now, and we're all very affectionate. and it's always weird because I never know, like, like Barry. I'm like, I just see Barry. I give him a big hug. I'm like, hey man, how are you? But like on stage, you kind of want to keep it more like, just kind of keep it moving. You don't want to do too much of a handoff type of thing.
Especially because I'm like, I don't know, like I don't want to say deer in the headlights, but kinda. When I'm up there, like when I'm hosting, I don't even know where I am. Like I get off stage and someone shakes it, like, "Oh, you pulled the guy's pants down and punched him in the face." I'd be like, "I did? Sorry, I was just trying to walk back." Like,
so hosting is that unique animal where you're trying to be funny, yet keep things moving, yet be informative, yet remember everybody's name that you just learned 5 minutes ago in their credit. It's a lot. It's more juggling than it is stand-up comedy, but it does give you that ability, I think, to really establish yourself as a stage presence without too much heavy lifting on the joke part. Because I don't feel like people want their host to do a lot of time or material in between comics. I feel like it's a good way to do some stuff up top. And if you've got like a good 5 minutes that you're really trying to work and really trying to get better with, you kind of do that, and then the pressure's kind of off, and then okay, maybe somebody says something that reminds you of a different joke, or you can kind of talk about something, and it's you can kind of you can mix some stuff in there, but the pressure's kind of off. Like nobody's gonna be like, oh, I wish the host did more jokes in between comics.
That's a really fucking good point. I'm glad that you said that, because so Delusional has me, they had me do one last week, and I got 3 booked of just hosting gigs coming forward for it. So I'm trying to get better at that aspect of it. And I realized, so we did like the Thirsty Robot a couple weeks ago, and it was like 100 and something people in there. It was a free show, so they were rowdy as hell. And I had comedy streaks, as you know, I'm sure, where you can go fucking like 6 weeks without a bad set or something straight, just killing it, and it'd be like, this is fucking easy. And then you can go a couple weeks where you just eat shit every time, and you're like, why the hell am I doing this? And I happened to be on a good streak going into that, where I'm like, I'm fucking the best. And then I went, and it was a hosting gig, and I did my material up front, but it's so hard to start on a cold crowd. It's so hard to do material that you don't earn. I mean, like when Mike likes when you do material in between two of the comics. And it's so, like, I didn't realize that, oh yeah, you can't really do a joke about cum that you didn't fucking, like, earn by doing, making the people like you first with a couple things in a row. You can't just do it in between comics. So I'm trying, I'm learning a lot. Hosting, that's for sure.
No, absolutely. I would say hosting it's a great opportunity, and it's really what you make of it. And I think that's great. Mike with Delusional has really given me a lot of reps to really get into a bunch of different stuff, including hosting, including kind of helping put shows together and organize some of the comics and stuff. So I think he doesn't he's not out front a lot. He doesn't really put his name out there, and he's really kind of a bit of an unsung person, but yeah, and I'll talk a little bit if we have some time about some of the other shows that we have coming up with him, because I'm also involved with his the Dirty Bird show that we're doing as a stage production now. So I can talk a little bit about that later. But yeah, it was actually to go back to the original topic, the open mic stuff. It was really the open mic in Kingston at the Kingsbury where I started to do stand up again. I had done stand-up a while ago as a younger person, and then when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and I never really went the open mic route. I started by writing jokes. I would go see stand-up comedians that I really liked, and I was just sort of stupid enough / ballsy enough to say to some of them, hey, here's a joke I think you might like, or here's a tag, or here's a callback or something. And more of them than not encouraged me to kind of keep going with it, and some of them sort of started to use some of my stuff, so I thought that was cool. And then I met a promoter, this woman named Annette Pollock, randomly through a business connection. I sort of met her, and she was doing a show in Weymouth, in my hometown of Weymouth, And she said, yeah, you know, if you're writing jokes, you should be telling them. So do you want to do 5 minutes? And I was terrified, and I had, you know, sort of the notes scribbled down, the whole thing, and I did it, and it went quasi well, and you know, got some laughs and whatever, and then it was sort of off to the races. So I started doing shows with her, and then I was married, newly married, and my now ex-wife really was not a big fan. We had a daughter, and then we had a son after that, and it was just there wasn't a lot of time to kind of go out and really do any type of performances, whether they were booked or otherwise. Just with little kids running around, so I kind of went away from it. And it wasn't until Mike's the Kingsbury open mic that, you know, post COVID, post divorce, post kind of a big change in my life, that I kind of went back to it and started doing, you know, open mic stuff again. And that led to, you know, getting booked on shows and doing shows with them.
Wow. So that's a cool way to get back into it. Did I see that you're headlining?
Yeah, it's so funny because I wouldn't even call myself a headliner. Like I have a great amount of respect for the people who've been doing this for a very long time and are really people that can bring people to a show. That their name attracts people to a show. And I you know, I wouldn't start naming them because I'll leave somebody out. But there's so many of those in the local scene that are really good, and I've had the pleasure of working with. I happen to be a volume writer when it comes to jokes. Like I will write, you know, 10 jokes for every one that, you know, most comedians will write. So I have enough material where I can do 45 minutes. I wouldn't call it like it's not a natural headlining set. It does sort of flow, but I certainly have a lot of work to do in terms of like getting better, getting more conversational, getting a little bit away from the setup punchline schematic that sort of I've been doing ever since I started with 5 minutes. I mean, that's a great way to start, but when you get kind of the level where you're doing 45, like a lot of the stuff should sort of blend together and be a little bit more conversational, a little bit more story-like. So that's what I'm working on now. I'm working on just getting to, like, I have 45 minutes of jokes, but not everybody wants to hear 45 minutes of jokes. You know, people want to hear a 45-minute set where you're actively killing in the room and you're pulling the laughs out of people. So that's my next the next place I want to go with it for sure.
Yeah, that's Japanese to me right now, is storytelling type 45 minutes, like that style of doing it. I realized it the other night where I've been doing, because Mike has been so great, and I've been doing a couple other shows with Mike Katrobis too, and some other folks that are finally booking us. So I'm like, holy shit, like I got to make sure I do my good 5 to 10 minutes type of thing instead of trying stuff.
Yeah.
And then the last couple of weeks, I've been able to go to open mics and you know, do jokes again. You know, like ba-bang, ba-bing. You know, the setup, the punchline. And I had so much fucking fun doing new jokes with that kind of thing. Doing AIDS jokes, doing all kinds of crap that, you know, you're not going to do during those book shows. And I realize they make me laugh the most. But I can see that if you had to do 35 minutes, you know, there's only so many 30-second quick zingers that you're going to be able to get in there before people get tired of it.
Yeah, and I built it around some, like, the 45 that I have now is really built around 6 topics. And I really, some of them are a little bit longer than others, but I have 6 kind of core topics that I talk about, which helps organize the jokes, and it helps from a writing standpoint because I'll write within those topics, and then if something works, I was at the Alley Theater a couple of weeks ago, and I did the 10 minutes I did up front were all new jokes, but it was all pre-existing topics that I've already talked about. I was just trying new stuff, and, you know, a few things worked, a few things didn't, you know, whatever it was. But again, it was a hosting gig, so I really wasn't, my job was just really be the first man out of the chute, break the crowd up. I ended on what I thought was my strongest, which was OJ had just died. So I knew we were going to do something about it, and it was going to be topical, and it wasn't going to be around for very long. Like it's that sort of in and out of the news cycle. So I ended with the OJ stuff because I'm like, that's the stuff I'm gonna get rid of. But I also thought it was the most relevant and the strongest that I had. So he said, I said OJ Simpson died, which got a round of applause, which was sort of, you know, weird in and of itself. And I said, you know, I'm conflicted, right? Because, you know, I'm mad that OJ killed Ron and Nicole, but I think I'm like more upset that he left the Kardashians alive. I said if he was going to kill a man and a woman, shouldn't it have been Bruce and Caitlin?
Oh my god, so good.
So that got a laugh, and then it just happened. The Alley Theater, they just happened to be having an event there the next morning that they were promoting. So I said, OJ's he's taking all these secrets to the grave now, and we'll never really know what happened. I kind of let the room just take like an awkward pause, and I was like, oh, by the way, Lorna has a medium coming in tomorrow. So if you do have OJ questions, or if you do have questions for OJ, just reach out to the medium, and they'll get those passed along. So it was good. But yeah, I had some other stuff that I was able to kind of work in, but I really now my goal is to really not expand out into like new topics or to write necessarily even more new jokes. It's just really decide what the strongest stuff is within those 6 topics, work on blending them together, not necessarily like one after the other, but like within the topics, like figure out ways to be more conversational. I mean, you guys have obviously worked with headliners, and you've seen a lot of headlining sets where it doesn't seem like, oh, now they're talking about their next bit, and it's like, oh, now they're going to the next hunk of whatever it is. It's more seamless. So
it's almost like the YouTube rabbit hole.
Yeah, we went to the taping of Mike Katrobis did his comedy special, and he's been, I think he's 30 years in the game now or something like that. It's his first special that he's doing, and yeah, it was pretty intense because I've talked to him about writing before, and he's like right now, my 10 minutes, I can do them in any order. I could do 10 different jokes in 10 different orders or whatever and just mix them all around. And to me, it doesn't really matter. Like, I use segues to make them feel natural, but they're jokes. Like, you can tell. His are 20-minute chunks of, he's like, my son is a newborn at the beginning and he's 14 by the end of the joke. I really can't do it in another order. But it's, there's a million. You can see the little bit of the creases in the wall of where the jokes go in between each other, but man, you have to be looking for them. That's the impressiveness.
And that's what's wild about life and kind of your life as a comedian. I mean, you guys are both young guys. I know Wayne, you look like you're about to die, but the I'm just kidding, Wayne. You do
see there.
Oh yeah, you can't see
Wayne. I can't see you. Yeah. I can't hear you either. Oh. I've been pretty sure I've been doing
Andrew,
this solo for a while now.
I can hear and see you, Wayne. I'll give you the visual, Anthony. He looks like he's about to shoot up the post office. That's if you need the visual.
Does he?
No, but
does he still look like he sweats chicken broth, or can you see that through the computer screen?
Real quick, I'm gonna back out and come back in. It might stop the recording, so hold on, wait for me to come back.
If I had a nickel for every guy I heard tell me that, that's
Oh, there you are. Okay. I see you, Wayne.
Perfect. There we go.
I'm sorry if you were trying to, cool.
For
the last 20 minutes, if you were trying to jump in at all, I was stomping all over it, I imagine.
I did one time. I had a feeling you couldn't see me or hear me, so that's fine.
I was like, just shut the fuck up. All right, Wayne, you talk now. Sorry, buddy.
I lost my spot. So when you were talking about putting your jokes together in 45 minutes and like you don't know where you end up, what I was starting to say was it's kind of like going down the YouTube rabbit hole where it's like 1 minute you're looking up like monster car videos or monster truck videos, and the next thing you're looking at like breastfeeding shit, and you're like, how the fuck did I get here? Yeah. But you got there.
And it's all you, right? Like it's all your personality, and it's just, but that's the way sometimes when you're writing material, it doesn't all fit together. And I was gonna say, you two, are both younger guys, and I'm 42, but my life since I started telling jokes when I was in my late 20s to now is completely changed. Like I wrote a ton of these jokes when I was, before I got married, before I got divorced, obviously, before I had kids, before I had one kid, before I had two kids. My parents are significantly older now. Like my dad's 84. Like I'm doing jokes about my 84-year-old father that I wouldn't have written, 10 years ago, because when he was in his 70s, even, he was like a spry kind of guy. And now just with the culture and the way things have changed, like I talk a lot about my parents being politically incorrect, and that hits a lot harder now. Not only for people who see that in their own parents and sort of recognize how uncomfortable some of those conversations can be, but also older people who hate the fact that they're kind of being left behind in this era of political correctness, and they don't like, so they're on the other side of it, being like, and you try to kind of play that both ways. But yeah, I was gonna say your material kind of changes. It is hard. Like, I know comics. I've definitely seen comics who I know personally do jokes about their kids, and I'm like, talk about how the kid's in preschool or something, and I'm like, that kid's, in high school at this point, but when they wrote the joke, the kid was younger, so it just makes sense to,
We had that a couple weeks ago when we did the Gibbs Garage, and Pat Collins was hosting, and he was doing a joke about his son being 3.5 years old, and I have a 4.5-year-old. So when we got over, like, I've bumped into Pat, I've talked to him a few times. I don't know him that well. And we were talking, I said something, oh yeah, you have a 3.5-year-old, right? He's like, I did like 10 years ago. I was like, oh, awesome.
Yeah. I mean, but again, if it's a good joke, you don't want, like, I hate the fact that no one's going to care that OJ died 3 weeks from now when I have another gig or whatever. It's just, it sucks because, I mean, but again, then you do some news stories that are kind of a little bit more evergreen. We had Barry and Wilson and Brett Davey and I are on a text chain, and when those conjoined twins got married, oh my God. I mean, we were just, it was like Christmas had come in March. We were just falling over ourselves with how many jokes we were writing on that.
My favorite part of that was when they came out and started talking about it, because they have two heads, like two sets of
Isn't that funny? We had our own group chat, by the way, about the same thing. We had another group chat with another comic that we were talking. We were like, "Oh my God!" and we went over it for a whole day too.
I think that was everybody's group chat.
It was a whole day on that.
But they can't. Like everybody was asking, like, how do they have sex? Like
first question.
And the married one came out and said, "Oh, my sister, she just puts in her headphones and listens to podcasts, and we just kind of do our thing." I'm like, she's not listening to podcasts; she's listening to "Oh Yeah" by Yellow and just fucking rocking it. Like,
I like to think she's listening to your podcast. That's what I like to think. I like to think that because she's going through a little open. She's going through a little pain of her own. So
it's got to be. Sorry.
Well, I was describing that girl earlier to somebody, and they said it's a guy goes conjoined twins. I go, yeah. I go, girls get two heads. She's shaped like a Y.
I would love to see that conversation with the married couple, and she's like, "Are you thinking about my sister when we?"
It's got to be though. When you're not in the sex tunnel and you're outside of it, and you just see like a baboon doing it, and you're like, "Oh, that's fucking weird." I imagine that she's outside of the sex tunnel most of the time when her sister's doing it, so she's just like, "Fucking God!" Like when I'm trying to watch like a YouTube video, and my kid comes over and keeps grabbing on my leg, and I'm like, "You fucking," like I want to punch him. I can imagine it's the same feeling. Like you're putting sexual stuff on Wayne because you're a deviant, but I can imagine if you're a regular person.
Well, there's so many layers to jokes like that, right? Like there's the obvious front ones, like we all started. I mean, that was the where we all started was conjoined twins getting married. It's you got to be careful because legally they can get divorced, but they can't get separated. So we started with the guy was married before and he left his ex-wife because he wanted more head. Like we all started writing jokes like that, but then you do go you do start going to those jokes where it's like what the fuck is that like to have a completely different person that's just you're in their lives all the time. It's just it's fucking nuts. It's you can do so much stuff on that.
That's a perfect metaphor for writing comedy that you just said about conjoined twins. So think about it. When you first started the process, you were just raffling jokes out about her needing heads, all this kind of stuff, and eventually you're like, what does she think about this situation? And that's what you found funny about it. And that really seems what comedy is. Eventually you're like, what do I actually think is funny? God damn.
Yeah, you really have to. I love writing in a group. Like again, not to keep mentioning my my comedy brethren, but we do a thing, and you guys are definitely invited to the next one. We're going to actually do it in person at the Kingsbury the last Tuesday of the month now going forward. But it's a group we call the Writers Room, and we get together and we just somebody will call out a premise that they're working on and kind of what they think, what their thought process is on it. and where they might need some help or need some direction, and we'll all just start firing off, suggestions and things. And what's great about it is sometimes somebody comes up with something and it's great and it fits into your act and they kind of finish a joke for you, which is perfect. But a lot of times what's great about it is you kind of get to see where everybody's minds go.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can kind of zag away from that, which ends up sometimes being even funnier because you that misdirection, like now where everybody's kind of head is going to go. Like I was writing one, and I'm taking this to the group in a couple of weeks when we go. But I was writing one the other day about wishing my dog could talk, and I had this whole thing about like I really and I want to start with that premise to see kind of where everybody goes, because I kind of have where I'm going to go with it. But it's I want to kind of throw that out there and be like, let's talk about if your dog could talk. And then, again, the not to spoil it, but the punchline is like, I wish my dog could talk because he could tell me things, like how he feels about me or whether or not he's gay. Because I think my dog is gay. And, I just wish he could I feel bad. He's got to live with that information on his own. Like, I just wish he could come to me and tell me. And, he's a Bichon. He's a Bichon Frise. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he's gay or I don't know if he's gay or if he's just French. I don't know. Like it could be one or the other. So, but yeah, I love writing in a group like that because that also helps to get everybody's input. Sometimes just great jokes come out of it. And Brett was telling a joke or telling a setup about Brett loves doing stuff in the news. He's a big current events guy. He loves doing topical kind of humor. So he put together this whole thing about this failed gender reveal. It was a couple had this outdoor party, and they hired a plane to go over. And the plane was supposed to trail blue smoke if it was a boy, and it was supposed to trail pink smoke if it was a girl. But when the plane was approaching, they saw the plane kind of wings start to kind of go back and forth, start to rock back and forth, and all of a sudden it goes past the party, no smoke, and it just goes boom down into a field, a couple hundred yards away. And immediately, without even thinking about it, I just said, well, that's an expensive way to announce a miscarriage. And it was like nobody else even came up with a joke because they were just like, that fits really well. But now he won't do it because he thinks that's too offensive.
When the perfect punchline ruins the joke. That is a good...
He's like, what if somebody in the audience had a miscarriage? I'm like, I've seen a couple of miscarriages on stage.
That is something I wanted to bring up. Was the writers' room, because I am in the Facebook group.
Good. Yeah, I thought I'd invited you in there. Yeah.
And I've posted a few things on there, and you're always the first one. You're always the first one.
Well,
how about this? How about that?
I'm addicted to social media, and I'm also addicted to jokes. Like my first love is and always will be writing jokes. I love trying to come up with just the perfect line or the right phrasing. I will take a joke that's 23 words and try to get it to 17. I will change the word prostitute in a joke to hooker because hooker is funnier. Like the mechanics. And I was trying. I'm working with a couple of people that are just starting their comedy journeys and starting their I won't call it a career because most of them it won't be a career, but they're starting their time in comedy, and they I've tried to explain to them everybody comes in thinking it's an art. And there's a very large science component to it. There's a math to it. There's a you can tease out what is funny about something and sort of figure it out in a way that takes some of the fun out of it, but also makes it like a puzzle. And that to me is that's why I love when somebody brings me an equation to finish. They're like, oh, well, what about this? And how do we we're trying to get to here, and I'm trying to say this. And I just go, oh, what about this, and this? And then what I love about it too is like, I like my style is to machine gun jokes. I will write 25 punchlines to a setup that somebody has, whereas a guy like Barry will come in and write one joke that's better than 23 of the ones I just wrote. He's such a sniper that he'll come in and just take a huge swing at it. So yeah, I appreciate you mentioned that, Wayne. I think I think people do use the group, and hopefully when we start meeting in person, people will start doing more there.
Yeah. Do you so being such a, I'll say like a nerd of joke writing, do you watch comedy too, or are you one of those
Well,
people
yeah,
that like you hermit yourself?
I find myself not watching it as much now that I'm actively in a process of trying to kind of figure out my own voice, if that makes any
Mm-hmm.
sense.
That makes sense.
I don't want to do I don't want to do an impression of somebody. Like I don't want to start telling jokes the way somebody else does. But certainly growing up and up until probably very recently when I kind of shifted into now I'm trying to really find where I'm at. I don't need more material. I just need to be better at telling the material that I have. But up until a point, yeah, I love. I grew up on comics that I was born in '81, so I got to see a lot of the '80s comedians and that sort of renaissance that happened in and around that time. Um, the Seinfelds and Eddie Murphy and those guys. But even the guys that go back a little bit further than that, my parents uh, were fans of comedy as well. So I sort of got to hear early records of like George Carlin and international comedians. There was a guy that grew up near where my parents did in Glasgow named Billy Connolly. And I recommend to anybody who is a fan of comedy to look up Billy Connolly stuff because he's so wild. He was probably the first what they call kind of alternative comic. He wasn't doing jokes. He was just telling stories about his life and things that amused him and would do it in a way that was just so crazy and so out there and just so animated that I'm like, people on his show were just in tears. And Robin Williams and Billy Crystal and Whoopi Goldberg had sort of found him through the Comic Relief thing, and Whoopi brought him over and put him on at the Brooklyn Academy of Music in New York in 1990. And it's one of those sets where it's just like you're holding your stomach. You're just you're just hoping you can just breathe through it. It's so good. But yeah, I love. But the like new guys, obviously, Big Chappelle head. Chappelle, I got to see. I was lucky enough to see him when he came to Boston, the most recent time. Chappelle's just a genius in how he structures and how he's got a gravitas that never was there before in his older stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think as he's aged and he's sort of grown into that. He's a smoker, so he's grown into that voice where he's got that sort of deeper tone to his voice, that richness, and it just makes you want to listen. Bill Burr, fucking, I love Bill Burr. I love Pete Davidson's impression of Bill Burr.
I've heard it.
I don't know if you saw him on his last special talking about that. He goes, I don't care that some friend of his who was a rapper was on Kanye's album. He's like, I don't care. He's like, that's what he does. He's a rapper. He's like, I don't want Bill Burr showing up at Sunday service. You need to find God, Petey.
So since you're analytical, let me ask you, what do you think of Shane Gillis? That's a phenomenon because we're on the same page of this analytical thing. I've been the first 10 episodes of this podcast were me just talking analytics of comedy as much as I possibly could, and everybody was like, "Shut the fuck up." But now we saw Shane Gillis like 2 weeks ago, and I'm enamored by how fucking good he is, and also how I can't figure out why he's so good.
I think with Shane Gillis, he does I'll call it, and this is not in a derogatory or disparaging way, but Larry the Cable Guy had a little bit of the same, I'm going to make you think I'm not good at this by just sort of being kind of, oh, shucks, and like, oh, golly gee, kind of a little bit more country. And then you automatically assume, I think a lot of us do because of the accent and sort of the subject material, that he's not intelligent. And he's a very intelligent person. And he knows very well what he's doing. And the great ones, I don't know if Shane's great yet. I think he's got some time, but the great ones always will make it seem like it's much easier than it is. He will always make it look very, very simple, and it's not. And that's what loses people. And I hear what you're saying. I don't think I have a beat down on him in terms of how he does that patter. he's got like a patter that kind of happens. That's he's having a conversation, but it's just him. But you feel like you're in the conversation. Like you feel like you're in a dialogue. You don't feel like he's talking to you. Some comedians get very.
And he's the mascot of our generation now. He's South Park.
Yeah.
He's like all those shows that we grew up watching. You're like, that's the voice of that.
It's distilled into a voice that still realizes what's funny, yet is being told by a lot of people that it shouldn't be. And I think that's where people talk a lot about cancel culture and that sort of thing. I think a lot of that is white noise and static that's really not relevant, because most people who are being told not to tell those jokes shouldn't be telling those jokes. They're the Michael Scotts of the world. Like they're Joe in accounting who thinks he's going to do Richard Pryor's material at work. Like that, those guys should shut the fuck up. But when you're a professional comedian, and again, I would say anybody who's been paid to be on mic and has to live and die by the laughs of an audience, if you're funny and people are laughing, that's not a debatable thing. That's not, you can't come in and tell me afterwards that what I said to those people wasn't funny. You can tell me that you personally found it offensive, but to create a standard and be like, a guy like Shane Gillis got canceled for some stupid fucking thing that he did on the stage that, had no bearing on anything, but it's like, that guy's up there fighting for his life. He's trying to get people, he's just trying to get people to laugh. I used to do a thing when I hosted. I used to do like a whole thing about, people not. I was like, so you might get offended, and that's okay, because luckily no one's ever died from being offended. And it's like that. That's all. It's a good disclaimer before the show, because it's like, just because you are uncomfortable with this, or you don't think like there's a line that should be crossed. Like some of the stuff that Shane talks about, certainly with Tony, Kill Tony, with Tony Hinchcliffe, and Rogan, and all these guys that are just they're the edge. They're doing the cutting edge stuff, and you know what? They're professionals. I want them there saying that stuff and doing that stuff. And if it goes too far, we'll all go, yeah, it was too far, and won't do that joke again, or we won't talk about that thing again. But it's like, I want professionals doing that stuff on the edge, because that way we know where it is. Otherwise, it's like you don't. If you're not going to talk about any of that stuff, there's a ton of people in a lot of marginalized communities that really want to be part of stand-up, and I think they should be, and I think they can't be in a lot of ways, because there's people telling them that they are not allowed to joke about the things that they represent.
You need people pushing those boundaries.
Oh, absolutely,
like the Bruces and Carlin. These guys that were catching a lot of flack back in the day, but they pushed the limits, and here we are. Comedy's better for it.
And look at the difference between George Carlin doing it versus Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor was a crackhead who lit himself on fire. Carlin was a really smart, kind of brainy guy that really knew how to work with words. But they were both coming from the same place, and as a society, we sort of dictated and said like, "Oh, well, Carlin was to be deified," which I think he should. I mean, they think he was, top 3, all time, top 2 all time, whatever it is. But Richard Pryor was doing the same thing, and Richard Pryor was putting a lot of stuff out there that it's hard to watch now, because you're like, oh, I'm watching this Richard Pryor bit, and I don't see why this is so edgy. It's because Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, Kevin Hart, Dave Chappelle, like there's just a lineage now of people that have walked that same road, but nobody was saying that stuff when Richard Pryor was saying it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, on Shane Gillis, he's walking the rope that Louis set.
Yes.
I guess is a great way to put it.
Yeah, there's a genealogy when it comes to comedy. We're all in a family tree of some sort, and if you establish a branch of that and do something really unique and really different, that's a game-changing thing. But not many people do. Most people are derivative of the thing that came. Like, it's like science. As if we talk. It's a good thing to talk about the science. Earlier, it's we're trying to further the work of the guy before us or the person before us. We're not many of us are reinventing the art form. as it were.
No, it's too uncomfortable to reinvent it. That's the problem with stand-up.
Yeah.
It's like it kind of goes with the analogy you gave earlier. It's like falling out of a tree and you're just trying to grab a branch. You're just like, if this works, I'm grabbing it. I don't give a shit what
Yeah.
it is. Instead of, and a lot of the time, like Stephen Wright, right? He's one of the best. I would put him in my top 10 probably ever too, of stuff out there. And he's a one-liner comedian. Like, how much more basic in the original style could that possibly be? But then, how unique does he make it?
And if you like Stephen Wright, I always say when you're ranking the best comedians of all time, you have to rank the tree that goes below them. Sort of like Belichick is ranked as a coach. Bill Belichick's ranked as a football coach. Everyone says he's the best of all time, but it's like he hasn't really produced the amount of great coaches that some of the other ones have, and that has to do with the conversation. So if you're going to say that you love Stephen Wright, I agree, and I would put into his bona fides, I would put Mitch Hedberg's entire career in his catalog. Like, I'd be like, that counts in terms of judging how great Stephen Wright was, because Mitch was a direct lineage from that and just did it in a way that incorporated more of a kind of a drug humor slant to it, but it was like directly in that set, which is not to take away anything from Mitch. I think Mitch was an absolute genius in what he did, and he did it so well that it made it even more broad, and it brought it to an even broader audience, where I think more people know Mitch Hedberg than they know Stephen Wright. It depends upon where you are in America. Around here, a lot of people know Stephen Wright because he was local, but yeah, I think that's...
Yeah, but you can point a direct line there.
Absolutely, and I would encourage, you guys and any comics that are listening to this, like, don't ever feel as though, like, you have to stand out in a way like that. Like, don't be afraid to sort of, take some of that swagger and that style, because those folks that were doing this and working so hard, they we're standing on their shoulders. Like, as comics, we're standing on their shoulders. And if, like, somebody starts mentioning you, I mean, you can't obviously don't obviously, steal jokes, but and I won't mention any known joke thieves out there, but we all know what their names are. But it's like, if you can watch a comic and go, like, yeah, like, see how he just did that, and see how he kind of had everybody going that way, and then he whiplashed them back the other way. Like, I think I can do. Like, I think I can make that, my own. I think I can use some of my stuff and sort of approach it that way. Or that guy's got kind of a swagger, or maybe baby faces it, to use a wrestling term. Like, maybe he sort of holds back and holds his punches. Colin Jost does that, and I've sort of tried that on as an approach. I've sort of said, what if I kind of just lay back in the cut a little bit and deliver these jokes with kind of a wink and a nod? Does that work better than maybe doing it more upfront and more brash style, like an Eddie Murphy? Like, I don't know, So it just, I think that's good, and I think that's healthy as you develop as a comedian, to be like, how do I get better? You don't have to recreate the wheel. You don't have to do everything from scratch. It's like there's some stuff out there that can help you and you can learn from.
Yeah, it's so hard to walk the line to it too, because I see two different avenues of doing that, where I will watch a comedy special and see the structure of a joke, and you're like, oh, I like how a misdirect in that place would work really well in a joke. And then you can use that to kind of put a foundation into a joke that you do and all that, and as long as you're not tailoring it to their setup, it actually is a way to, go off of them. And then you see some people, again, to bring back in Shane Gillis, I see so much of this now at mics, where they hold the mic like this with the two hands there, and then one off like this, one back in like this, and you're like, man, that's him. You're looking too much like
that. And it's...
Oh, man, you derailed me, by the way, real quick, before I forget the thought, when you said that you were watching Colin Jost and getting stuff from him. I'm like, man, Andrew kind of looks like if Colin Jost was doing an interview from his car. Like, Scarlett Johansson broke up with him, and he's like, I live in my car now. He gave us an interview.
I agree. So to bring this back to open mic, I'm glad you said it. Bring this back to open mics. Now, when I go to open mics, because I find most of the ones I can't go to the ones in Boston that are very well attended for a lot of scheduling reasons. I have my kids a lot of times, and just the distance. I live out in the South Shore, so there's not as many. But I'll go to the one. There's one in Hanover at Ryan's Entertainment that I'll go to sometimes. But I still love doing the thing that I used to do at the Kingsbury, which is I go last, and I'll only do jokes that I write during the open mic. So I will write jokes about the other comics, about their material. I try to come up with tags. I try to come up with stuff. So I'll only do that kind of as an exercise. I'll do that kind of material if and when I can. And one of them was there's this. Oh, I wish I could remember his name. I'd give the kid a shout out. Oh, it's terrible. I can't remember it. But I promise I'll tell him to watch this because he'll remember being mentioned. But he's a kind of a hefty kind of kid, and he was wearing like sort of a big kind of burly canvas coat and a big beard and whatever, and he'd done his set and he whatever and sat down. So I come up later on the mic, and one of the jokes that I said to him, I said, "Oh man," I go, "Hey, I like that jacket," and he goes, "Thanks." I go, "What brand is that?" I slept in a Carhartt. and he liked it, and I said to him afterward, I go, you get up and say that I was like, if you have a gig and you like dress like that or whatever, I go, you use that, just be like, oh, do you like my jacket, what it's the brand is, I slept in a Carhartt, or
it's a perfect opener.
Yeah, so yeah. I'm like, just anytime I say anything about anybody else, I'm always like, use that. If you think that's good, you use it. You get up and say it about yourself, because again, self-deprecation is a very powerful tool to break through to an audience and to get them like in on the joke, like especially if you're a host, and especially if you're going to say anything about the other comedians, because again, some people just go like, ooh, you get that weird ooh or that weird kind of buzz, and you just have to break it up. You have to put a little levity on yourself.
Yeah, I'm trying that in my next hosting gig. So I have a joke called Bad Person, where I just go over all the reasons why. But I think that a lot of people think they're good people, but if we took register of the things that we do, if you totaled it, it would come out bad. So I have a joke about all the things that add up to that. And then now with hosting, I'm going to say, like, I really hope I'm a good host, because I'm certainly a bad person. And I want to start the show that way, just to try to self-deprecate a little bit and see if I can get him on my side before I start the jokey stuff.
So again, being my mind automatically goes to how can I help this concept, because this is the way I think. It's not altruistic. It's just literally that's how my mind works. So I'm thinking, if you when you're on doing that, right? So what's funny about you saying you're a bad person is if everything else about you presents as good person. So it's funnier if you are dressed well, if you are maybe in a collared shirt and like you're sort of mild mannered and you're very groomed and coiffed, and you come out and people think, oh, this is like, immediately they get the impression like, oh, this is a guy who's sort of got his shit together and whatever, and then you automatically start talking about how terrible you are. Like that's funnier than somebody who you're sort of coming out there with a more equilibrium.
Like Dice Clay. You're like, yeah.
Or just they don't know. Like they come out and they don't know which way it's gonna go, and then you start talking about being a bad person. There's less of a drop for them. There's less of a curve to sort of get around. It's not as drastic. Like I one of the first jokes I do in my act always is again, it's a joke about a hooker. And just me saying the word hooker surprises a lot of people, because I come out very like, I like to tell people I have resting retail manager face. Like, like I can't go into a CVS without an old lady coming up to me and be like, "Excuse me, how much are these candies?" And I'm like, I don't work here. I don't know what gave you the impression I worked here. I'm wearing a shirt that says, fuck the police or something. I'm like, clearly I don't, but they look at my face and they're like, "Oh, you seem like you're responsible."
No, I want to take you out to lunch just so you can complain about my food to the waiter for me. Because I think people will do it good.
I'm like, oh, I'm exceedingly nice to waiters and wait staff, because I know that everyone in the kitchen wants to murder them. Every kitchen person I've ever met, and I love you all, but everyone I ever worked with, I ever met, they're all psychotic, and the fact that they get to be around knives is a crime. Like,
if you could do drugs in your workplace and it's okay, because it totally is. If you ever went to a chef, you're like, "Hey, you can't do drugs in here," they'd be like, "What?" There'd be no chance that could happen.
Oh my god! Quick story, because I love I love the hospitality industry, and I was a bartender for many years. And one of my favorite memories was I worked with this kid whose name I won't mention. Not that I remember his last name, but I won't mention his first name. But we'll call him Bob. And so this guy Bob was the chef in this relatively nice restaurant. Wasn't super nice, relatively nice enough where he wears a chef coat and a hat. So I'm behind the bar, and him and the kitchen guys are going through cases of those nitrous canisters that you use to put in the whipped cream. So they're doing whippets the whole night. At one point, he wanders out of the kitchen behind the bar and starts making himself a drink. And I walk up, I'm like, "Hey, man," I'm like, "Everything okay?" And he goes, "Oh yeah." He goes, "No, it's fine." And he's pouring the drink, like he'd mix it in the shaker, and he's pouring it all over the bar, completely missing the cup. And this couple's sitting there looking at him, and I shit you not, he turns around and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've been doing whippets all night." I was like, you gotta be shitting. They went back in the kitchen and used a 550 degree oven and knives that were so sharp they could take a finger off, and without
cooked fish for a pregnant lady.
Yeah, without any problem whatsoever, and didn't fuck up one time. It was perfect chef level, sort of the Bear TV show level, chef in the back. But I just thought that was so funny.
I've seen that go the other way. I work in the weed industry. I one of my companies that I do is I'm a consultant for like commercial grows. Like I'll go in and fix them to make sure that they can grow properly. And you run into some characters doing that fucking job because some weird people grow weed, I tell you. And I went to one a couple years ago, and this kid was doing. He looked exactly as you would expect. He had a really long hair, beard. It was a black band T-shirt to his knees with sweatpants with his outfit. And he, one day, the guy's like, the owner of the place, he's like, "I just can't get a consistent yield out of this kid. I don't know what the problem is." And I walked in, and he had a safari hat on, and he came out of a room with Toto Africa. I can hear it on his headphones. They're into there. And he was blasted out of his mind. I saw nitrous cans all over the ground, and I went, I can't stop him from having what that must be the greatest experience a person could have. He was walking around weed, listening to Africa in a safari hat, just like on nitrous.
But what's great about that, so go back to my earlier point, what would have been great about that if you had said like, "Oh, hi, my name's Anthony," and he went, "Oh, hello, my name is, Gerard."
No, he talked exactly like you'd expect him to talk. He was like, "Ugh."
That's what I sometimes want to say. I want to tell like some of the weed comedians, like Troy Burdett, very, very funny weed comedian out there. Sometimes I want to just tell them like, just for the first like couple lines of your set, do like very highbrow humor, and then like after like two jokes, just be like, "No, I'm just kidding. I'm a total pothead. I'm exactly how this looks like, But at least fake it for the first couple of minutes, just so people don't realize what's actually happening.
There's no way he could fake it. I phonetically wrote out my last name once on a piece of paper for him when he said it, and I scrambled his brains like a fucking microwave.
How do you say your last name? Because I was wondering. I've only ever seen. We haven't been on a show together, but I've only ever seen it like written out.
Yeah, it's Eugenio.
Eugenio. Okay,
I'm not Italian, and everybody thinks I am, and I don't have a good joke yet for about. Because almost all I say is like, someone will say like Eugenioli or something instead, or like, "Oh, this guy's Italian, huh?" And I'm like, "Don't put my fucking name in pasta sauce." That's the only thing I have so far that these guys do to me out there. But that's a good killer to my set.
Since you haven't heard this yet, the best one was Donde Ruggiero.
Oh yeah,
not even get the first name right.
Donde Ruggiero sounds like the first thing you learn in Spanish.
Yeah, he did. I'm like, that was including my first
name. Donde la biblioteca.
Do you know Laugh Boston, the open mic they do? So it was there.
Oh, fun.
So they do bucket. Anthony Eugenio, right? And I give it, the guy takes the thing, and he goes over and he goes, "You're Anthony Eugenio, right?" I'm like, "Yep." And he's like, "All right, you're next." And I go, "Okay." So I go to the side of the stage, and he goes up, and he goes, "Everybody give it up for Donde Ruggiero." And I don't move because I'm like, "Oh, you must have took the wrong note." And he looked over at me. He's like, "You." I went, "Me?" Like, fuck. No way. And then what do you do from there? Like, it's so hard to bounce back when everybody hates you already for your name. I thought, what do you think about changing names? So that's it, because you got a white ass name just like Wayne. How do you like feel like somebody like me, right? Where most of the time people have to ask how to pronounce my last name. Does it behoove me to change it and move on away from that? Or, you look at Sebastian Maniscalco and all those comedians where you're like, you'll learn it if they're good enough.
Yeah, Eugenio. Yeah, I was gonna say, if anybody ever gives you shit about your last, you'd be like, name's Anthony Eugenio, but I'm not Italian. And anytime anybody tells me I'm Italian, I always tell them the same thing. What the fuck is the matter with you?
I have one. It was another joke, but it was basically it's a joke about my wife insulting me. Like she's called me a sloth before, like Sid the Sloth, multiple kinds. Sid the Sloth, the actual one in the wild. She called me the Emperor's New Groove before. But I think like the thing I can never forgive her for, the worst thing she's ever called me is Italian, because those are the worst fucking animals of all. So I have that joke that I usually do if someone will fuck up my name or something in the beginning, because it's true.
My dad. It's so funny when you get into Europe and like who hates who over in Europe. So my parents are both from Scotland, and my dad was born just before World War II, and I remember during the World Cup one year, France was playing England. Oh no, it was Germany and England during the World Cup final. It was Germany playing playing England. And I said, "Oh, Dad," I was like, "Who do you root for there?" I was like, the English, obviously the history with Scotland, and then the Germans, you're bombed in World War II. I was like, who do you root for? He's like, "Oh, no contest." He's like, "The Germans are the worst fucking people on the face of the planet, bar none, worst people ever." And I was like, "Really?" I was like, "The worst people?" I was like, "Worse than the French?" He goes, "Don't be stupid. The French are not people."
True. Yeah, England. So Europe is the best for genuine racism. They're so good at it and great at. They get so weirded out if you're like, "Don't be racist." They're like, "What? What are you talking about? He's a different race than me. What am I supposed to do? You have to garbage at him."
It's like farm to table racism. Like it's like very fresh, it's very organic racism. Like it's not tainted by anything. It's just very. It's just you can really.
It's all white too. It's like I see an Irish guy really mad at an English guy. I'm like, "Hey, calm down, you little baby." You guys.
They got so homogenized during the plague that they really had to come up with new reasons to hate each other. It's like, wait a second, my God is slightly different than yours. It's like, really, just a different name? No, different setup with the Holy Spirit? No. But there's a couple.
It's like watching 1% milk argue with 2% milk. It's like, it's the same shit.
The 1% and the 2% people are having a war. That's too funny.
Shit. Well, I think we're getting towards the end of it, Wayne. Right? What do you think?
Yeah,
you had something else.
One question. Yeah, I was actually leading in towards this earlier, but we didn't get there. Quick question for you. You're obviously very quick-witted, and you write very quickly. Does that ruin your ability to watch comedy?
It kind of does a little bit, because I will certainly try to. My head tries to guess where it's going, but no more than like the people that I watch, the professional comedians that I watch are good enough where they can lose me in it. Like I don't worry. It ruins my ability to watch beginner stand up and a lot of feature acts for pleasure. If I'm watching them, it's usually because I'm writing jokes in my head for them, which I freely give after the set is over. Like if I say like, "Oh, I always kind of try to couch it this way, especially if it's like it is a headliner or somebody. I'll say, "I thought when you said this, I thought you were going here." Mm-hmm. And a lot of times that's a nice way to sort of just throw it out there and be like, and I've had some good responses there, and people say like, "Oh, thank you." That's but a lot of times, as I said, like my brain doesn't work as differently as some other people, so you really do get that nice mix of like I'm very pleasantly surprised when it goes to a place that I'm not thinking. I kind of do that weird Jimmy Carr laugh where I'm like, oh! It's more of an aha moment that I'm just like,
Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. So it deepens it when it happens in a place where I forget what I was laughing at. It was a Howard Stern thing because I listened to it. I was sort of raised on Howard and I still listen to him on Sirius all the time. But it was an old bit that his guys had put together, some phony phone call, and just some of the stuff they were coming up with. It's just like it's just my head wasn't there for whatever reason, and they just kept like they'll take a joke and just beat it to death. But it's like sometimes that fifth or sixth joke is the one that really breaks you. And you're just like, because that's the one you don't see. Like, you're like, they can't possibly mine anything else out of this. And they go back to the well one more time with it. And you're just like, for whatever reason, that's what breaks you. So, yeah. So but yeah, for whatever reason that I'm watching it or I'm a fan of it. Like, I loved being involved. I love the hang. This was tremendous. I love coming on with you guys and talking about this stuff. I think more comics should talk about it because I think it's a very what we do is very it is very different from anything else that people try or people and it's a shared experience that I think we should bond over more because a lot of comics are like me. I don't have a ton of really super close friends, and I meet guys like Brett, Barry, and Greg, and all these guys, and I'm just like. Now they're my homies. Now it's like we all have this kind of weird shared experience that we can talk about. So it's cool to hang.
It is a really weird thing to just start doing. Like I have people say to me like, "Oh, don't you get scared going on stage?" I'm like, "No, I don't get scared going on stage." The part of me that's nerve wracking to me is that somebody's not going to think I'm funny. Like I could care less about talking in front of people, but it's almost like pulling your pants down in front of a crowd. It's like, are they going to like it?
Here's how I describe it to people who have not done it before. And I tell them that there's an insane amount of confidence involved. And this is why some stand-ups are really hard to deal with personally. But I always give people a very large leeway when it comes to ego. Because in order to do stand-up comedy at a feature or higher level, you have to say to yourself, not only am I funny, not only do I think I'm funny, not only do I think you'll think I'm funny, I think that you will pay money in order to see me be funny in front of a group of people. That's a big... You have to have a lot in your head. Like, you have to really believe your shit is good. Because if you get to that level and people are paying you to come see you, it's like... A lot of people never get to that level. No matter what their vocation or their thing. I don't know any golfers that suddenly became professional, that started playing on a 9-hole course, after work, and now people are paying to watch them golf. I know a lot of guys that play guitar for free, like, anytime there's a party, but very few of them get to a level where a bar will hire them to come play at their, coffee night or whatever. I'm like, it's so when you start getting paid to do shows, and you kind of have that level of ego about you, it's like it is a different thing. It's a totally different thing, and it's like, and to your point, Wayne, I'm always afraid. I think if you're not afraid people are not going to laugh, it's very hard to be funny. Yeah. If you don't want to make people laugh, that's a different delusion, and that's a different thing altogether. But I think once it happens during a set, it happens to me before every set, I get that fear. But that fear goes away, and some of the best sets I've ever had emotionally have been when I bombed. Because I will say a joke, nobody will laugh, and I'm like, the worst thing ever just happened, and I'm okay. I'm still standing here, nothing happened. Nobody, the comedy police didn't come and get me and tell me I can't do jokes anymore. They didn't rush me off the stage. Nobody booed. People just didn't think the thing I said was funny. And I got to go on to the next in a long line of things that I think might be funny. And if the next one hits, that's like, cool. Or none of them were like, Brett's taken some pictures of me at gigs where I've been absolutely like, totally. And now I'm in the dark because I give up. I live in my car now. This is where I live. I feel like I'm on just being on a cell phone. I always feel like I'm on what was that video back in the day? The tape that went around the Blair Witch Project.
Oh yeah.
I'm still having at the wrong angle. I'm like sniffling into the camera. I'm like, please send help.
I'm funny, right?
But yeah, forget what I was saying. Follow your dreams, everyone. That's what.
Yeah, I just recently had this feeling. I haven't even told Anthony about this, but I've been. We have that show on May 11th for Delusional, and Anthony's hosting. I'm opening. Casey Crawford's headlining.
Oh yeah,
Pat Lacey's feature. So I've been really working hard on that 15 minutes, and I'm in my car. I drive for work, so I'm in my car, and I practice multiple times the 15 that I'm gonna do.
Yeah,
and I had like this little bit of a thing where I did one of the jokes that always lands for me, and I didn't hear laughter, and I got anxious. And I'm like, "There's nobody in the fucking car. Like, why am I anxious?"
yeah, exactly.
But it happened,
It's like,
and I was like, "What is wrong with my head?"
yeah, and that's the thing. It's like sometimes you condition yourself, especially if you've done a few sets, you condition yourself to sort of those pauses that you leave for laughter. It can fuck you up if there's no laughter in it because you're not used to going right into the next thing. And again, to go back, not to keep selling this as a science, but it is in a way, and is a rhythm. And you kind of go like when you're going ba bump, ba bump, ba bump, ba bump, and then there's no ba bump after one of the jokes. It's like, oh fuck, like what? What do I now? Yeah. I'm all out of sorts. What do I say now? Sometimes, just to get the rhythm back, I will jokingly repeat the joke. If it really bombs, I'll just go like, "Let me say that again," and when I'll do it the exact same way, and that always gets a laugh because people it's just the stupidness of saying that joke again. But the laugh that it gets me back into the rhythm.
Yeah.
That is a good way to do it. Because I can't help but every time a joke bombs, I look back like I'm shocked, like an ass just walked by me that has blown me away, and I can't help but be looked at it. It takes everybody fucking out of it. It's so annoying because I'm like the other day I have a joke that ends with, and she thought that I can come looking at her face, and it's my.
I just think that's funny right there.
It's my favorite joke that I do, and I've done it so many times, and I close with it a lot of the time. It's a nice misdirection, all this kind of stuff. But man, did I have a hosting gig that I did it at, and I did it to pure silence, and I was like, "Oh, what?" Because there's nowhere to go from there.
When your closer doesn't work, is like it's the nightmare thing, and it's. Sometimes I've been guilty of this. Like sometimes it's just like you use that as like fuel to get off stage. Like you get off so much fat because you're just like, well, anyway, that's been my like. It's just you just go right to it. You're just like, oh fuck, get me out of here. But sometimes you really just got to live in that moment of it and just be like,
when you're hosting, you can't. That was the problem. Normally, I can, and I could just go. All right, sorry. I used to do I said this. Everybody's gonna kill themselves because I said this for the 100th time. But I used to do a Bud Light joke where I would say I always thought it'd be the watered down flavor that took out Bud Light. Turns out took out watered down woman. So I used to say that, and I'm like, this is so funny. But the set ends when I say it. Every time I say it, people will laugh and they're like, okay, but get out of here now because you can't say that. So I used to just say it and walk off, and then I'm like, you can't do that. That's chicken shit stuff.
No, I was gonna say if you have any jokes in your act while you're hosting, and again, sometimes it's you have to read the room, and it's like if it's not a bad joke, but it just didn't get a reaction, and you can actually like I would literally just when you come up after the next comic, set it up again and do it again, and then commit to it, and you do that after every comic, and it's like dare people to stop laughing. Like it's sometimes you just have to especially if you're on a showcase show and it's like there's like 8 people to go and it's just you're going to be seeing from a lot more from me.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just your responsibility to keep things going, and it's like once you commit to a bit it gets funnier.
Yeah, I feel like going silly helped me a lot from last time. I learned from that too, because you're right. Like you got to go up every time. So when I lost them with that joke, which I certainly did, God, did I lose them? I had to bring up somebody else afterwards, and I was like, I don't know what to do going up. So I have a bit about I call anal equity. It's it's about how prisoners have a tremendous amount of equity they can tap into with their assholes that they're not using, and it's a whole bit that I go across with that, and it's so silly, and it's tied nothing to do with me. It's just I call it a business idea, and I feel like that's a silly jokes are good ways to get people to be like, all right, clear the slate.
That one
back in.
That one gives a whole new meaning to the term being upside down.
I'm gonna take that. That's nice.
They're all free. They're all free. If you can get somebody to laugh saying that is that's my favorite thing. I love it. I love when anybody can get a laugh. Just because it's like it helps us all.
That's an experienced comedian thing. The more headliners I talk to, like I was talking to a headliner and he was like, "Hey, I used to do this joke. You should do it. I think it'd be good for your act." And he told me it, and I'm like, "This is paramount to fucking my wife." To me telling you to do, like, to give you one of my bits and you do it. Ew.
You know what though? It's like we all need each other to be funny because none of us will ever do a show alone. Yeah. 99.99% of us will never do a show by ourselves. You're always going to need at least somebody to host, at least somebody to open. Somebody's always going to be doing 5-10 minutes. And you never know who's who. I worked with guys when I first started out that are now huge names, and they were so nice to me and they were so encouraging. And I will go as a paid customer whenever I see any of them doing shows. I will always still show up as a paid customer, even though there's some of those shows I could actually be on at this point. I will always go see them, and I always pay to go see them because I'm like, those guys supported me and helped me out so much, even if it was just coming to do like a show that I put together on the South Shore. And it's like, it was a place that I had Dan Crone and Corey Rodriguez on the same show. Wow. At one time. Like, I mean, I had like, I booked rooms that were just really, really heavy hitter guys now, but it's just like back in the day, they were just, and they always used to be so encouraging. Dan Smith was another one that helped me a ton when I was younger. I bombed in front of 6 people, I think it was, at Quincy on a gig that this woman Annette had booked. And I said to Dan, I was like, "Oh, good luck, man." I was like, this is not going to go well. And he goes, "Just hang out for a few minutes." And he got up there and he fucking killed. I swear, some of those people must have babies because the room just seemed to expand. It just seemed to be like, and he murdered everybody. And it was just like, I was like, wow, I'd never seen anybody kill in a room that small. And he did, and he lit everybody up. And it's just, that's the thing. So yeah, man, I love what you guys are doing with this. And I, again, if I can ever be of assistance with anything, it's my favorite thing to do. Definitely come out to the writers' room. I got a couple of shows for Delusional for the puppet show coming up, for the Dirty Birds. May 11th, while you guys are up in New Hampshire, we'll be at the Sons of Italy in Quincy. The week after that, we will be in Fairhaven. The 18th, we'll be down in Fairhaven, Mass, doing that show. And then on the 25th, we'll be down in Providence doing the same show. So 3 weeks in a row of doing, and I do a little part in that. I do some of the writing for the show. Most of it is Mike and his brother, sort of have existing characters that they write for and stuff. But I help kind of write some of the other human characters and stuff. And then I have a little small part in it as well. That I do a bit of a narrator part, a bit of a Rod Sterling, welcome to this bizarre world that we're in, and kind of talk about it like that. So really fun, and yeah, hopefully I'll be seeing you guys both soon on shows and everything else.
Yeah, I can't wait to work with you again. So
yeah, awesome. Well, this has been great, everybody. So remember to go check out all those goddamn Delusional shows because they do the best shows in town, and they have fucking puppets, which is awesome sometimes, and they're my favorite things in the whole world. And you can see Andrew on it, a bunch of them. Go look up his website, on his Twitter, which could be X if you believe in the patriarchy, and if you believe in the matriarchy, it's Twitter. And then we'll go from there. Yeah, it's been a worthy step for the quest for laughs. Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Hey.
Well, that's an expensive way to announce a miscarriage.